Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce our first speaker who will set the tone for this morning's discussions. Daniel Corpuz is Undersecretary for Tourism Planning and Promotions at the Department of Tourism. He was appointed in January 2011. Mr. Corpuz holds a bachelor's degree in Hotel and Restaurant Administration from the University of the Philippines, where he also earned his MA in Urban Planning. Aerotropolis, he ought to know about that. His record in government tourism service spans more than 30 years, starting in 1974 when the fresh college graduate worked as a tourism promotion officer at the Bureau of Tourism Services of the then Ministry of Tourism. He stayed with the Bureau until 1982 when he left with the title of Chief of the Licensing Division to work for the Philippine Convention Bureau, first as Deputy Executive Director and later on as Acting Executive Director. His career path included stints as Associate Professor and Dean of the Asian Institute of Tourism and as Executive Director of the Philippine Convention and Visitors Corporation, where he worked from 1991 to 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, our Undersecretary of Tourism, let's welcome Daniel Corpuz.
Pleasant good morning to everyone. Let me start off this session by thanking our colleagues here in Clark, particularly Chichos Luciano and Captain Ben Solis, for giving us this opportunity to share with you some data, some statistics on the tourism industry. We'd like to begin by letting you feel good. Next slide, please. So this essentially underscores the efforts of our tourism industry in making ourselves known globally. It started off last year, obviously, with the launching of our branding campaign, It's More Fun, which, by the way, piggybacked on an increase of some $25 million of our promotional budget. In all the years that I have served the tourism department, as mentioned by David, this was the first year that we had an increase in terms of marketing. Most prominent amongst these, obviously, were our popular destinations in Boracay and the St. Paul Subterranean River, which was announced as part of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Of importance to us was our participation in the World Expo in Yeosu, Korea, wherein the Philippine Pavilion garnered 2 gold awards, primarily on the creative content and being one of the most popular booths in that particular event. Now, going to some background information as to how we performed in year 2012, this gives you a numerical count of the number of foreign travelers coming from our major markets. Last December, we welcomed the 1 million Korean in our shores, okay? With Korea still actively growing. Last year, it grew by 11.5%. Of note, likewise, were the markets of Australia, Taiwan, and Malaysia, posting double-digit figures. There was a hiccup in terms of mainland China, but it still featured positive growth of some 3%. For this year, we will be aggressively pursuing the target of 5.5 million. The mainland Chinese market has opened up, and once again, sometime end of November, the first charters, primarily coming from Shanghai and Beijing, started to come in. This will be followed this coming May with charters emanating from Guangzhou and Chengdu, with hopefully by the middle of this year, we will be featuring something like 14 weekly charter flights. Okay? There are also talks of some Philippine carriers expanding their services to mainland China, eventually in that city of Guangzhou, southern China, as well as increasing frequencies to Shanghai. In terms of the revenues generated by our industry, this gives you a clear picture of an increase in terms of gross visitor receipts. We are expecting a composite aggregate growth of some 29%. Last year, the total gross receipts amounted to some 4,800 billion US dollars. Okay. This was calculated by, next please, an increase in the average daily expenditure of our foreign tourists. The red bar shows you that in 2012, each traveler who stayed one night here spent an average of $93. Multiply this by the average length of stay of some 9 nights, and you get some $893 spent by each foreign tourist that visited our shores. The average length of stay is one, if not the longest amongst our ASEAN friends. Okay, this is fueled by, in fact, our request to the Bureau of Immigration of amending the 21-day visa-free stay in most to our major markets and increase this to a 30-day visa-free stay. So negotiations are ongoing along these lines. Now, this is just a sample of the profiles of our foreign travelers. This is gleaned from a qualitative exit survey conducted by the Tourism Department and the National Statistics Office. As an example, for Korea, the average daily expenditure is some $139, and they stay on the average some 5.6 nights. The mix in terms of gender is relatively equal between male and female, with likewise travel arrangements appropriately, Koreans traveling here more on a package basis. Purpose of visit, majority comes here for holidays. Business at 5% and others, including English as a secondary language, comprises the package for Korea. Japanese visitors, and if you will recall, we showed that it has now responded positively. Last year, some 8% increase was tracked in this particular market. And by this year, hopefully, as the yen continues to grow stronger, the increase will be more felt. Chinese visitors obviously spend less, an average of $55 per day, with visiting friends and relatives being dominant in their purpose of travel. Next, please. In terms of some selected long-haul markets, here we have profiles coming from America, Canada, and Australia. Australia has been a very pleasant surprise to us. It featured something like a 12% increase in last year, and with Philippine Airlines as well as Cebu Pacific exhibiting some serious interest in increasing services to this particular market, we hope to further generate growth. Negotiating talks between the Australian government and the Philippine government is scheduled sometime the second half of this year. These talks are bogged down with respect to fifth freedom rights, but we hope to force the issue within this year. Next, please. Okay. Of special interest to us is domestic travel. The statistics here emanates from what we call the Household Survey on Domestic Travelers conducted by the National Statistics Office every year. Okay, for last year, 2012, some 40.7 million Filipinos traveled within our archipelago. More than half of that, mind you, are what we call day tourists, okay? And less than half indulged on overnight travel. However, it still is very, very substantial because each Filipino that travels spend an average of 4,000 pesos. Okay? The average length of stay is 3.5 nights. 25% of that 4,000 pesos is spent on pasalubong or shopping, which fuels our retail industry. The most popular destinations with respect to Filipinos traveling is Metro Manila. The biggest magnet, obviously, are those humongous shopping malls. Second is Boracay, and third would be the beaches of Cebu City. Okay. We have simply revised our targets with NSCB in terms of our projections, and we will end the National Tourism Development Plan year 2016 with some 56 million Filipinos traveling around. Next, please. Okay, here's the opportunity. In terms of room capacities, in 2012, through a survey conducted by our regional offices and local government units, we have an inventory of some 162,700 rooms all over the country. Less than half of that are in the 3, 4, and 5-star category. 16 or 15,000 rooms are in the pipeline and will be operational by the year 2014. Out of that 15,000 rooms, 6,400 are being constructed in our international gateway city, Metro Manila. So practically 1/3 of those rooms are to be built here in Metro Manila. Next, please. We have identified the room gap of some 37,000 rooms all over various categories. This is juxtaposed because of what we have mentioned, the target of 10 million overseas visitors and some 20 million Filipinos traveling. Okay. The issue now confronting this tourism industry is our close consultations with the Board of Investments. BOI intends to come up with a moratorium on the incentive package being given to hotel and resort developers, particularly in the cities of Metro Manila, Cebu, Mactan, and Boracay. We have appealed to BOI that they shelve that particular move at least until 2015, when we are able to generate more rooms, particularly in the countryside. More of this by or after the elections. Okay, in terms of air seats, which provides us accessibility and connectivity to our major markets. Please take note of Korea. Last year, we successfully negotiated the increase of weekly seats from 19,500 to 28,000, which exists right now, currently being enjoyed by both Philippine carriers and Korean carriers. The utilization rate right now for the Philippines is 79%. With Korean carriers posting a 90% increase with respect to the seats. So if we are to be able to succeed in our projected arrivals coming from Korea of some 1.2 million by the end of this year, we again have to sit down in the bargaining table and be able to successfully increase the existing 28,000 seats to something like 35 per week. Of interest also, if you will see, seat utilization from the Philippine side vis-a-vis the foreign side, particularly in the markets of India, Indonesia, Hong Kong, okay, and Taiwan. There are still gaps, particularly in the Indonesia side, and that is the reason why we have pinpointed doubling our efforts in the Indonesian market. It's an archipelago consisting of more than 200 million Indonesians. The standards of living have substantially increased, but last year only 38,000 Indonesians visited the country. So we will be redoubling our efforts, and in fact we have already established an office, a satellite office in Jakarta. AirAsia and Garuda is coming to our offices first week of March, and some informal discussions will be undertaken to be able to look forward to establishing direct flights between these countries utilizing Garuda as the air carrier. Next, please. On airports, considering the fact that our premier airport, Naya, is operating at a 130% above capacity, and that we believe the opening of Terminal 3 could be delayed to next year, early next year. The strategy obviously is to utilize secondary gateways. So you've seen the newspapers this past months with DOTC practically bidding out expansion contracts of some selected airports. But of immediate concern to us in the tourism industry, aside from obviously improving our secondary gateways, is the provision of customs, immigration, and quarantine services. Let me share you a side story about what happened sometime January this year. We successfully concluded talks with a charter operator in Seoul, and we agreed that 9 charter flights initially are to emanate from Seoul and land directly in Bacolod Silay International Airport. These 9 charter flights are fully loaded with golfers, mind you. They're just here, or they just want to go to Bacolod to play golf and stay 3 nights. We pleaded with the customs and immigration people. Customs responded. Immigration said they do not have the capability to set up immigration services in Bacolod. The charter operator, together with Zest Air, volunteered to pay for the per dimes and the transport cost of bringing these immigration people to Bacolod. No dice. But since the contracts already have been signed, we had to fly them in. We flew them in via Cebu Mactan International Airport for these golfers to be processed, and then at the dead of the night, flew to Bacolod. The operator had to pay, obviously, 2 times landing fees as well as the additional fuel. He lost money. However, he has serious intentions of doing it again sometime July, August. The piece of good news here is that because of this particular bottleneck, Executive Secretary Almendez's office issued a directive to selected government agencies to establish processing centers consisting of customs, immigration, and quarantine services in 7 airports as soon as possible. These are the airports of Puerto Princesa, Langendingan, Bacolod, Iloilo, Tagbilaran, Tacloban, and Legazpi. In response to this, the Bureau of Immigration submitted an urgent request to the Department of Budget and Management. Please release 198 million pesos to us. The plan is to be able to recruit and train 500 additional immigration people as soon as possible. As to when this will happen, we are in a praying mode, at least in the Department of Tourism. So, we continue to expound the use of our secondary gateways. Obviously, Clark International Airport is in the forefront. Our office in Shanghai and are in discussion talks to choose with charter operators in Chengdu, Sichuan province. So something positive might come out with that after the elections to fly Chengdu Clark directly. Next, please. Okay, 33 new airplanes are to be delivered to our Philippine carriers starting this month to March 2014. That is broken down into 14 Airbus 320s, okay, 7 321s, care of Philippine Airlines, 10 Airbus 330s, which will be fielded to the Middle East, Australia, Japan, Korea, and 2 Boeing 777s, each of which has a capacity to accommodate 350 passengers. So, the issue now confronting us is as to when will we be able to regain the Category 1 status. As most of you, if you have read the newspapers recently, the ICAO team is right now in Manila conducting another round of evaluations and will be leaving us sometime February 28. Even us in the tourism department know exactly or don't even have an educated guess as to what our chances are. But obviously, these are deliveries already of airplanes. Most of the routes that will be flown in will be in ASEAN, in mainland China, like what we have mentioned, the Middle East, primarily United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and Australia, with Philippine Airlines leading the pack of introducing services hopefully to Darwin and to Brisbane. As to marketing, our implementing arm, the Tourism Promotions Board, should be fully operational sometime June with hopefully a bigger kitty, with PAGCOR sharing some of its profits, and that will enable us to relaunch the It's More Fun brand globally. Okay. The Tourism Secretary also will be commissioning a market research firm to evaluate the effectiveness of the brand. This will be tested in some 10 selected destinations, the result of which would enable us to tweak the campaign and make it more effective. We are also expanding and diversifying our products. During the previous year, 70% of travelers that visit our country enjoy beach resort holidays. We now want to diversify this by offering additional opportunities. Please take note that private sector has introduced new convention and exhibition facilities in our midst. You have SMX, the arena, the new convention center in Davao, and a new international convention center currently being built in Iloilo. Leisure and tourism, the first locator in Entertainment City will open, that's Soler Hotel, next month. Okay. To be followed every succeeding year by the rest of the locators. Cruise and nautical tourism is being pursued quite aggressively. We have just invited 2 cruise companies to visit our shores. We're being helped by Singapore on this, who wants to build their country as a regional hub, but servicing the Philippines. Okay. Diving and marine sports obviously is being expanded. This will now include activities such as surfing and yachting. Next, please. In terms of upgrading skills, we recently were given a grant, a $6 million grant by the Asian Development Bank. And 2 consultants now are here preparing and conducting a training needs analysis, the results of which will be to offer various training programs, not only to the private sector, but equally, if not more important, to our local government units. While we have the framework for a national tourism development plan, we continue to lack the formulation and development of local and provincial plans, which has to be integrated to the overall picture. Therefore, a certain amount of this grant will be used to enhance the capability of selected LGUs in formulating these local plans. Next, please. Okay, we have successfully concluded and gone to bed with the Department of Public Works and Highways. For next year, they have set aside $12 billion of their budget to improve access between airports to the service center or the urban area, and to attractions within a radius of 60 kilometers. Okay. This will continue every year to culminate in 2016 with some 17 billion pesos being allotted. Okay, so in terms of targets, it is still quite ambitious. We're not letting go of the 10 million overseas arrival mark for year-end 2016. And we have ramped up our projections for domestic travelers to 56 million. Okay. The bottom line really is, next please, not really counting tourists, but translating their activities into economic programs that can benefit the countryside. The rallying call is to generate this number of domestic and foreign tourists to how much we can distribute to provinces in terms of additional economic activities, and the most important one would be employment generation. Should these targets be met, if you look at the column of year 2016, that means to say that the tourism and transport, I underscore the transport component, okay, will be able to provide 7.4 million jobs. Okay, so it's not tourism only, tourism and transport. The share in terms of employment opportunities to the overall national share of jobs will rise to 18%. Okay, so On that note, again, we'd like to thank everyone to listening to us, and we wish everyone good luck in being able to achieve all these goals. Marami pong salamat.